We live in a culture that kills artists, wants them to die. It kills them.
What's up, what's up? This is Beyonce on the red carpet with one of the hottest female artists out here, Miss Aaliyah. What are you wearing tonight?
I'm wearing Gucci shoes, Gucci. Got a little Indian jewelry work.
Oh, that is hot. All right.
I myself did not listen to Tejano music when I was younger. And my father used to own this restaurant. And, well, before he owned the restaurant, we had like a family group, and it was just like a hobby.
What if? A phrase nobody wants to hear about their own life. The ugliest way to describe disappointment, the purest form of unfinished. And sadly, for some of the brightest names in music history, we're forced to ask that exact question. Selena, Jeff Buckley, and Aaliyah. All three exploded fast. With all three, it was obvious they were going to reshape music from the ground up, and all three were gone before they could. But I need to clear something up, because in videos like this, the same names always show up. There's nobody from the 27 Club on this list. This isn't about artists who ended their lives by suicide, so no Kurt Cobain, no Amy Winehouse. Today's topic is the names whose stories got cut short by forces outside their control. Accidents, illness, tragedies, people who didn't choose to leave. And here's my real question. If music hadn't lost them, where would it have gone? Which musician's early death hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments. If you want to subscribe, now's the perfect time because we're starting. A breakout rookie and the biggest clubs of the era trying to draft him. That exact NBA-style scene played out in music too, when the biggest labels of the time were chasing Buckley, and he was about to step into professional music through Columbia Records. Jeff was one of those born an artist types. Even though he barely got the chance to truly know him, his father Tim left marks on music that didn't fade easily during his short 28 years. And without realizing it, he also gave his son a preview trailer of what his own life might look like. Jeff describes his early life as rootless trailer trash, a lonely kid with no sense of belonging, forced to move constantly. For boys, the father figure matters more than people like to admit. You can feel how deep Buckley's father hunger ran just from one decision, choosing his biological father's last name instead of his stepfather's. People who crossed paths with him in that short life describe him as thoughtful and incredibly kind. And all of that brings one word to my mind.
Grace is what matters in anything, especially life, especially growth, tragedy, pain, love, death. About people, that's what matters. That's a quality I admire very greatly.
Grace, a perfect title for his first and only album, deeply personal. The first time I heard it, the vocal melodies felt both authentic and genuinely engaging. That's the most reliable recipe for loving something. It's different enough to feel fresh and familiar enough to feel like it belongs to you. The structures in his songs go way beyond any single genre. It's more like a genius with a mind full of emotional motion, finding a way to turn that into something real. Not the memorized pop song blueprint you hear in chart-targeted productions, more like improvisation. That kind of expression is powerful, and you only see it in a very, very small number of musicians. For Buckley, expression always came before popularity. He was even uncomfortable being seen as a pop artist. There's a story that when a critic tried to compare him to a pop singer, he got so angry he stopped recording for days. The songs that hit us the hardest are usually the ones made without commercial anxiety. And it's funny, while the industry tends to throw marketing budgets at whatever promises more engagement and more money and push different to the side, plenty of perfect songs have still found a way into the mainstream through real music lovers like us. Because Grace didn't fit the standard, it looked like a disappointment at first. It wasn't playing for labels, it was playing for people driving and crying at the same time. People discovered the album through live shows. No expensive ad campaigns, no algorithm tricks. Just pure emotion, pure performance. The album hit music legends like a shockwave. Bob Dylan called him one of the greatest songwriters of the decade. David Bowie picked it as the album he'd take to a deserted island. Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin said he was the best singer to emerge in the last 20 years. Grace is the work that opened the door for Buckley to be seen as one of the greatest vocalists of all time. Something so singular, we wouldn't hear anything like it again for a long time. One day, I heard a guitar intro that grabbed me so hard, I stopped whatever I was doing and looked at the screen just to see what song it was. I knew Hallelujah was a Cohen tune, and I'd never even heard of someone called Buckley before. Later, I learned that this perfect take was recorded in one go, basically a live run. In the 60s and 70s, doing one-take live recordings wasn't shocking. But in an era with way more technical options, pulling off something that flawless in a single pass is honestly unsettling. For Buckley, music wasn't tied to genres or formulas. He'd use vocal melodies influenced by Eastern music when it fit, and he'd even mess with classic chord shapes. That sound musicians call the Buckley chord, he's the one who made it famous. Everyone expected him to keep walking forward with a second album. Then one day, he walked toward the river. And maybe he just wanted to breathe for a minute. The world is exhausting for soft-hearted people, and sometimes even geniuses just want to mess around. Some people interpret him entering the water fully dressed as a suicide attempt, but Jeff was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. A ship passed by, its wake pulled him out, and that unique voice, capable of making you feel everything, went silent forever. What if he hadn't wanted to swim that day? What if he'd gotten out just a few minutes earlier? That's exactly why his story forces you into 1,000 questions. And that's why, the moment this content idea formed in my head, Buckley was the first artist I thought of. When you think of pop and R&B today, the first name that pops into your head might be Beyoncé. But if she were still alive, you'd most likely remember Aaliyah right alongside her. And even if you don't realize it, you never really forgot her, because the superstars of our era, like Drake and The Weeknd, have pulled inspiration from her constantly, and they've even used samples. Timbaland has an online masterclass on beat making. I'm saying that just to show how untouchably respected he is in his lane. And here's the thing, that Timbaland was basically a nobody before Aaliyah's second album. The fact that a life that lasted only 22 years is still influencing modern music is the #1 reason she belongs on this list. You can decide whether she was lucky or unlucky, but the opportunities around her gave Aaliyah a real music career starting in her early teens. Her uncle had strong connections, and she hit success with her first album at just 15. When I looked at her life, one idea came to mind, the abridged edition. You know those shortened versions of thick books, where someone collects the most striking parts and optimizes it for easy reading? A typical life goes like this. School ends, you build a career, you have wins and losses, you pick up a couple traumas, and if you're famous, they get rebranded as scandals. And then you die. Those things usually take years. When your entire life is only 22 years, you're forced to live all of that at high speed. And while the industry was serving up the story, Aaliyah secretly married her first album's producer R. Kelly and was pregnant as a scandal, she was still 15. In an environment chaotic enough to destroy most careers, she managed to focus on the work, and she helped reshape R&B from the ground up. Real artists are at least a little revolutionary. If you don't like change, you can't create. The beats that might sound normal now, and the darker production beds, back then they were different. They stood out. For example, Try Again, which was also on the soundtrack of the movie Romeo Must Die, where she played a lead role, made history by hitting #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 purely through radio play, without a physical release. That was a first. Her creativity didn't stop at sound. It spilled into style too. Baggy pants and colorful sunglasses, which are still popular among some young people today, weren't exactly normal 30 years ago. By 2001, here's what we had. A young woman whose latest album debuted at #2 on Billboard. A star at peak productivity, trying to juggle film sets and music video shoots at the same time. She was grown now. That discipline was unreal. And the potential, how many perfect songs she could have given us, was impossible to predict. She was a 1 in a million talent. She literally had an album called 1 in a Million, and she left us in a 1 in a million kind of tragedy, a plane crash. The Rock the Boat video was originally being shot in Miami. For reasons nobody can fully explain, the director took the crew to the Bahamas for what was supposed to be a very short scene. For Aaliyah, who was already working at the most intense pace of her life, that extra chaos was exhausting. When the shoot ended earlier than planned, she was physically drained and just wanted to go home, to her boyfriend, Damon Dash. People close to her say she was always afraid of flying, and here's the cruel twist. She didn't even willingly get on that plane. She fell asleep from exhaustion, and her team carried her onto it. The aircraft was overloaded. After the crash, drugs were found in the pilot's blood. He didn't even have a valid license to fly. When you look at the details, it feels less like an accident and more like a murder. And the story of our final name is going to end with murder in the literal sense.
She was walking to the door. She was going at an angle. And I told her, "Don't close the door." And in that instant, the gun went off.
Jennifer Lopez, Ricky Martin, Mark Anthony. By the late 90s, Latin music was suddenly everywhere. Billboard, MTV, the Grammys, all at the same time. And everyone called it the Latin explosion, like it was the beginning of something. It wasn't. It was the continuation of something. There wasn't a single person who started it, because the person who should have been there to lead it wasn't there anymore. When I think of Selena, one idea hits me every time. She built the bridge, but never got to cross it. She took Tejano music out of the Mexico border bubble and carried it across America. She finished the studio recordings for her English language mainstream crossover. If that album had come out while she was alive, the Latin music history we talk about today would look completely different. But on the morning of March 31st, 1995, she walked into a motel room, and she didn't walk back out. Here's what you need to understand first. Selena's first language was English. She grew up in Texas, thought in English, spoke in English. But when her father Abraham heard his 3-year-old daughter's voice, he made a decision. That voice was going to sing in Spanish. It was going to stay connected to Mexican-American heritage. By 10, she was the lead singer of the family band. When the family's restaurant failed, the stage became their income. She was pulled out of school and gave up everything a kid is supposed to live through. And what did she get in return? A Grammy. 9 Best Female Vocalist wins at the Tejano Music Awards. Her own clothing brand, her own boutiques. The nickname Mexican Madonna, not as a diss, but as a way to describe how big she was. She designed her own stage outfits. The style blueprint for so many Latin pop stars you see on Instagram today was already there 30 years ago. And I have to say this too because it completes the story. When Chris Perez joined the band as a guitarist, Selena's father didn't approve. Too rock, not right. He banned the relationship. They got married in secret. Why does that matter? Because Selena knew how to fight for her own life too. She wasn't someone who just accepted whatever she was handed. She had her own voice, her own love, her own direction. And that's what makes her death feel even more meaningless. By early 1995, here's what they had. English songs already recorded in the studio, productions with names like Keith Thomas and Diane Warren, and a woman ready to step into the mainstream English market. If Selena hadn't died in 1995, where would Latin music be today? Would the Latin explosion have been bigger? Would the lane that Jennifer Lopez, Ricky Martin, and Mark Anthony walked into have opened earlier, and with more force, under Selena's lead? There's no clean answer. But we do know this. That album came out months after she died, sold 331,000 copies in its first week, and made her the first Latin solo artist to debut at #1 on the Billboard 200, with an unfinished album, After Death. So what would she have done while alive? Who knows? Yolanda Saldivar was the head of her fan club. Selena trusted her so much she put her in charge of managing her boutiques. Then employees started warning her that something was off. Selena didn't listen. Her trust ran deep, until January 1995, when it was revealed that more than $60,000 had been embezzled. On the morning of March 31st, Selena met Yolanda in a motel room in Corpus Christi to collect missing documents. She said the business relationship was over. Yolanda pulled a gun and shot Selena in the back. And it didn't end there. Selena stayed alive for a while, and Yolanda, an ex-nurse, didn't even consider giving first aid. After that, Saldivar played games with police for hours. She threatened suicide, but in the end she surrendered and lost that long nerve war. She sent herself to prison, and Selena, along with her dreams, to the grave. I hope you had a good time. And if you did, the only thing you need to do is support the channel with a like and a comment. I'm especially curious about your suggestions, because I really want to turn this place into something great for all of us. Life's short, and the music's playing. Until next time, take care.